January 14th, 1966. 11:47 p.m. Officers' Mess, Kaduna Barracks, Northern Nigeria. Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nziagu adjusts his watch beneath the dim bulb hanging from the corrugated iron roof. Around him, 5 young officers lean over a hand-drawn map of Kaduna, their faces half-shadowed, breathing measured. Outside, the humid night air carries the distant sound of drums from the city, a wedding celebration perhaps, or a naming ceremony. Life continuing as it always had. But inside this room, the air tastes metallic with anticipation. Nziagu's finger traces a route through the government district, the premier's residence. Here, 2 guards at the gate, rotating every 4 hours. The shift changes at midnight. His voice is calm, rehearsed, like a professor explaining geometry. He doesn't mention that the premier, Sir Ahmadu Bello, the Sardauna of Sokoto, is also his commander-in-chief. He doesn't mention the sweat gathering beneath his collar, or the way his hand trembles when it leaves the map. Captain Emmanuel Ifejuna checks his rifle, a Belgian FNFL, cold and heavy. Somewhere in Lagos, 600 miles south, other officers are conducting identical briefings. Same maps, same weapons, same conviction that what they are about to do will save Nigeria from the political chaos drowning the young nation, barely 5 years independent from British rule. None of them know they are lighting a fuse that will burn for 4 years. None of them can see the million lives that will end because of what begins tonight. Nziagu folds a map, slips it into his breast pocket, and looks at his men. Gentlemen, he says quietly, in 6 hours, Nigeria changes forever. The drums outside continue their rhythm, oblivious. By 3 a.m., the streets of Kaduna run red. Nziagu's convoy storms the premier's residence with military precision. Doors kicked open, shots echoing through marble hallways, servants screaming into the darkness. Sir Ahmadu Bello falls in his bedroom, still wearing his white sleeping robe. In Lagos, Prime Minister Sir Boubacar Tafawa Balewa is dragged from his home, forced into a Land Rover, driven to a roadside outside the city. His body will be found 6 days later, half buried in the bush. By dawn, the coup has succeeded in the north and west, but in the east in Enugu it stalls. And in Lagos, General Johnson Aguiyi-Ironsi, an Igbo officer not part of conspiracy, moves quickly to restore order, imprisoning the coup plotters and assuming control of the government. Nigeria's first military head of state. He promises stability, unity, investigation. But the mathematics of the coup tells a different story. Of the senior officers killed, the Prime Minister, Northern, House of Fulani. The Premier of the North, House of Fulani. The Premier of the West, Yoruba. The Finance Minister, Yoruba. Yet most of the coup plotters who survive are Igbo. And General Ironsi, now in power, is Igbo. In the markets of Kano, in the mosques of Sokoto, in the compound of Kaduna, a narrative takes shape, whispered at first, then shouted. This was not a patriotic coup. This was an Igbo coup, a plan to dominate the North. Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowan, a Christian northerner, watches from the barracks as protest crowds swell in the streets. Radio broadcasts crackle with accusations. Ironsi tries to calm the nation with a decree abolishing regional autonomy, hoping unification will heal division. Instead, it confirms every fear. In May, Northern soldiers mutiny in several garrisons. In July, they strike again, this time with coordinated fury. Ironsi is seized at Government House in Ibadan, tortured, killed, his body dumped in the forest. Gowan assumes power. And in the North, a new violence begins, not against soldiers, but against civilians. Igbo civilians. Markets burn. Homes are marked. Families flee through train stations as mobs gather with machetes and kerosene. By October 1966, over 30,000 Igbo are dead. 2 million begin the long journey east, back to their ancestral homeland, carrying children and suitcases and trauma that will never fully heal. May 30th, 1967, 7:15 a.m., Broadcasting House, Enugu, Eastern Nigeria. Lieutenant Colonel Chukwemeka Odumogu Ojukwu stands before the microphone, his uniform crisp despite the suffocating heat already building in the studio. Outside, thousands have gathered in the streets, market women in bright wrappers, students in white shirts, civil servants who abandoned their desks to witness this moment. They wave palm fronds and cardboard signs. They sing. Ojukwa's hand rests on the declaration before him. He has not slept in 2 days. Behind him, advisors from the Eastern Consultative Assembly shift nervously. They know what comes next. Everyone knows. For months, Gowon's government in Lagos has tried negotiation. Meetings in Aburi, Ghana, where both men agreed to a loose confederation. But Lagos reneged. Then Gowon divided Nigeria into 12 states, carving the oil-rich Niger Delta away from the east. A calculated move to strangle the region's economic lifeline. Fellow countrymen and women, Ojukwa begins, his voice steady, amplified through crackling speakers across Enugu. You have mandated me to proclaim the eastern region of Nigeria a free, sovereign, and independent state by the name entitled the Republic of Biafra. The crowd erupts. Drums thunder. Women ululate. Children who fled the northern massacres with machete scars, still fresh on their arms, jump and shout. For them, this is not secession, it is survival, a nation born from self-defense. But 400 miles west, in Lagos, Gowon receives the news in silence. His cabinet convenes immediately. Britain has already made its position clear. Nigeria's territorial integrity must be preserved. The oil contracts with Shell BP in the Niger Delta must be protected. The Soviet Union, smelling opportunity, offers support. By nightfall, Gowon authorizes a police action to bring the rebellious region back into the fold. July 6, 1967. Federal troops cross into Biafran territory near Ogoja. The first shells land on a village called Gakem at 5:42 a.m. A woman named Adiz is drawing water from a well when the explosion lifts her off her feet. She lands 20 feet away, ears ringing, unable to hear her daughter screaming her name. The Nigerian Civil War has begun, and the world is watching, though not yet understanding what it sees. October 1968. Owerri Relief Camp, Biafra. Dr. Erin Ifekwunigwe kneels beside a child who weighs 11 pounds. She should weigh 40. Her name is Nkiruka. The future is greater. But there is no future in her eyes, only the hollow stare of advanced kwashiorkor. Her belly distends grotesquely against stick-thin limbs. Her hair turned the reddish color of severe malnutrition. Around her, 200 other children lie on mats in a former school gymnasium. The air smells of dysentery and death. Dr. Ifekwunigwe has run out of powdered milk. He has run out of antibiotics. He has run out of almost everything except children who are dying. Outside, Nigerian MiG-17s provided by the Soviet Union scream overhead, searching for the makeshift airstrip at Uli where relief flights land under cover of darkness. Federal forces have tightened the noose around Biafra with methodical efficiency, a total blockade by land, sea, and air. No food in, no medicine in. International relief organizations like the Red Cross negotiate endlessly with Lagos for access, but permission comes slowly, loaded with restrictions. Gowon's advisor, Obafemi Awolowo, has stated the strategy plainly. All is fair in war, and starvation is one of the weapons of war. The oil fields, the reason for so much of this, now burn under federal control. Port Harcourt fell in May. Enugu fell months before that. Ojukwa's forces, once advancing boldly into Midwest, now defend an ever-shrinking territory, a landlocked enclave barely 3,000 square miles, packed with 5 million people and swelling daily with refugees fleeing the federal advance. In London, television cameras broadcast images that would define a generation's understanding of humanitarian crisis. Skeletal children with distended bellies, flies gathering on vacant eyes, mothers too weak to cry. British journalist Frederick Forsyth stands at a feeding center with his notebook, documenting what he calls the first genocide televised into people's living rooms. France, through Charles de Gaulle, sends covert arms shipment to Biafra, geopolitical chess disguised as humanitarianism. Tanzania and Gabon recognize Biafran independence. But recognition without food is just words. Nkiruka's breathing becomes shallow. Dr. Ifekwunigwe places his hand on her chest, feeling for a heartbeat that grows fainter with each passing minute. At 4:17 p.m., she stops breathing. He closes her eyes and moves to the next mat. By the war's end, starvation will kill more Biafrans than bullets ever will. January 15, 1970, 2:30 a.m. Uli Airstrip, Biafra. The last plane sits on the tarmac with engines running. A Swedish Red Cross cargo jet painted white. Its pilot checking his watch every 30 seconds. Around the airstrip, Federal troops are less than 15 miles away, close enough that their artillery fire echoes through the humid darkness like distant thunder. Close enough that everyone knows this is the final flight out. Colonel Ojukwu emerges from a black Mercedes, his uniform replaced by civilian clothes. Khaki trousers and a simple shirt. No medals, no insignia. Just a man who led a nation that lasted 967 days. His aides carry 2 briefcases and nothing else. 3 years of war condensed into leather and locks. He pauses at the aircraft stairs, looking back at the land he called Biafra, at the fires burning on the horizon where his army is collapsing, where his people are preparing for federal occupation. He boards without ceremony. The plane lifts off at 2:47 a.m., disappearing into black sky toward Ivory Coast. Exile. By January 12th, General Philip Effiong, Ojukwu's second-in-command, had already traveled to Lagos. In a ceremony at Doden Barracks, surrounded by federal officers and international observers, he signed the instrument of surrender. Gowan stood beside him, proclaiming the words that would become famous. No victor, no vanquished. But when federal troops enter former Biafran territory, the reality is more complicated. In some areas, discipline holds. Soldiers distribute food. Commanders enforce restraint. In others, revenge takes its course. Homes looted. Women assaulted. Summary executions in villages accused of supporting the rebellion. The International Red Cross estimates between 1 and 3 million dead, most from starvation, disease, and exposure. The exact number will never be known. The Nigerian government issues the 3 Rs: reconciliation, reconstruction, rehabilitation. Biafran currency becomes worthless overnight. Families who save thousands receive £20 sterling regardless of their deposits, wealth evaporating in a legislative stroke. Igbo civil servants return to their posts in Lagos, Port Harcourt, Kaduna, forced to smile and work alongside those who would call for their extermination. The federal structure remains, but trust does not rebuild so easily. 54 years later, the wounds remain unhealed. In the Southeast, young people who weren't born during the war wear Biafran flags and demand remembrance. Secession movements flicker and reignite. The oil that helped cause the war still flows from the Niger Delta, still enriches few while impoverishing many. Ethnic suspicion, though softened by time and intermarriage, still shapes Nigerian politics in ways both subtle and overt. And in quiet villages across the former Biafra, old men and women carry scars, some visible, some not, from a war the world watched on television, sympathized with, argued about, and then forgot. But Nigeria has never forgotten. The past is not past here. It is present, breathing unresolved. The Civil War ended. The questions it raised did not.